If you have to roll a 2+ to charge, don't roll a 1.
We all love tier lists, and why not start doing a series of tier lists for Conquest? Starting with the characters, and what better characters could I start with besides the ones I know best, my beautiful Nord characters? To keep this tier list and future tier lists in context, these rankings are based upon what competitive, experienced players should expect from these characters on the battlefield. That means that this tier list is not going to be applicable for roughly 99% of Conquest players out there. If you use an S ranking character and you don't win as many games as you'd like, and you use a D ranking character and you actually win the majority of your games, that's great. That means you found exactly what you need for your local meta. So keeping that in mind, once you hit the top tables at those tournaments, you'll start to see the rankings of the characters I have on my list start to become a little more of a reality. First, we're going to start with the hardworking Jarl. Where would the Jarl go? Let's first of all stick him in B for now, and let's go over some of the aspects of the Jarl. There are going to be 7 criteria by which I rank available roster: the usefulness of the roster, how well the character clashes, how well the character duels, how well the character provides support, how well the character's supremacy affects the game, and how well the character's special rules affects the game. So let's look at the Jarl's available roster. Keeping in context the Nord's theme and aesthetic of scoring early, scoring fast, striking hard early, and then fizzling out later in the game, meaning Nords are the strongest in the first 4 rounds of a game, and then they're the weakest rounds 5 and on. That's the general design of Nords. So typically, regiments that you'd want to skew the power towards are more offensive-based regiments and regiments that can score you points early on. What does that mean? That defensive regiments, while they do have their place as a anvil regiment in the game, meaning they reach up to the center of the board and kind of just stay put and force your opponent to deal with them, the Nords can do that okay. One of the worst in the game at it, but it's okay for our suited purpose of holding the enemy still for a round or 2 while we try to outscore them. That means regiments like Huskarls and Trolls and Valkyrie are not that valuable to a competitive Nord list. A single regiment of them, it's okay, but more than one, you're going to run into issues against other melee-focused factions. So keeping that in mind, let's see what the Jarl has for us. The Jarl does have a mainstay of Huskarls, Raiders, and Ugars. The Raiders and Ugars are pretty good. Raiders have the ability of being able to take an officer or a captain, which allows them to act as mediums, meaning for just 120 points, Raiders can be taken and then used as scoring. They can sit on your back lines and just score on an objective. So Raiders are good for that duality that they can choose between. Ugars are pretty good at countercharging. Like most Nord regiments, if you take a charge, you're dead. So you need regiments to screen them in some way. And what better regiment to screen Ugars than light Raiders, which should be on the board already in front of your Ugars. And of course, the Jarl has the Huskarls. Now, Huskarls are better served in other warbands. Oh, one more thing. I'm not going to rate any of these characters based on unreleased models. As far as clashing is concerned, the Jarl is the epitome of middling. He does not have any cleave, and his clash for Nords is only a 3, which is okay at best. The Jarl is not a character that you want to send in clashing into enemy regiments. He's not going to serve that purpose well. Defense 2, no evasion. You're just going to get dueled right off the board. So in attempting to make a clashing Jarl, you're going to run into a lot of problems. And also, as a support character, the Jarl is the worst character we have in the entire roster. Whatever the Jarl can do to support, other characters can do far more effectively throughout the course of a game. For the supremacy, for the Jarl, we have Surprise Attack. While this character stand is on the battlefield, all friendly infantry regiments gain the Opportunist special rule, which means when you're trying to build a list with a Jarl as a warlord, you can kiss all your Mountain Jotnars, Brutes, and Cav goodbye, because they do not benefit from his supremacy, which means you're stuck with just regular infantry, which means you're limited in your army's composition, which is not a good thing, since Mountain Jotnars are pretty good for their points cost. As well as add +1 to their attack characteristics when performing a clash action against the flank or rear of an enemy regiment. Well, the issue with the surprise attack is that it not only does not affect some of your best regiments in the game, Ugars and Jaltnars, Opportunists states the following: a stand with this special rule may reroll failed hit rolls when performing a clash or volley action against an enemy regiment's flank or rear arc. Take note that this says volley action, which means if you have stalkers or bow chosen, you can put them to the sides of enemy regiments and shoot into their flanks and basically count as blessed for that attack. Now the issue with the Jarl, he doesn't have any ranged. As a matter of fact, only half of his available roster even works at all with his supremacy. So the Jarl has what looks like on paper, in theory, a good supremacy, but in practice, you have to really build around it and then limit yourself. Lastly, the Jarl has a shield and an impact 2 for special rules. Shield is only good in duels for characters, which means I have a defense of 3 with the Jarl. But if you get into a duel with a Jarl, he's basically just a caster with a couple extra attacks. He's very weak, so the shield's not going to do anything. And impact 2, it is what it is. He's going to impact along with raiders, but you don't want the Jarl in your front lines because he's just going to die and not add much to your army. So all in all, the Jarl has a lot going against it. So we're going to put the Jarl in the D tier. He is by far the worst character we have. Near useless at the top competitive tables. Next, we have the Conagar. The Conagar is the Nord's elite character. He is the king of kings. The Conagar's available roster has Bowchosen and Huskarls, and then it has 3 Jotnars. Now, a Conagar in Huskarls can be a good defensive brick, and it is arguably one of our best defensive bricks. The issue is that when you make a support Conagar, you do not want him in combat at all. So putting him in that brick does not work, which means you don't need to take the Huskarl brick with a Conagar. You can take another warlord and do Huskarls better, which leaves you with arguably the Nord's best regiment, the Bowchosen. And of course, the Conagar is our only source of allowing mainstay Bowchosen, and Bowchosen is where the Nord competitive build is currently at. You can't go wrong with taking 2 Bowchosen and 2 Ice Jotnars if you understand what you're doing with them. So the availability and the usefulness of the Conagar's list is actually pretty high, since he is probably our best character and he has probably our best regiment with probably our best restricted option. Now you may be tempted in taking a Conagar as a clashing or dueling character. No, 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 no. There is a little secret sauce in Conquest. It's called Quicksilver. Dueling characters fall under one of 2 categories. Either you have Quicksilver or you don't. If you don't have Quicksilver, don't bother making a dueling character. Just duel with whatever base stats you have against enemy base stat characters and just hope for the best. If you attempt to make a 300-point Conagar and it'll work in 1 or 2 games, you're going to run across a Quicksilver character, and with our middling defense, the Conagar is going to get axed easily. You might be thinking, well, how about I take Watchful Eye of the High Kings, which basically allows you to duel twice. Well, you have to sink 3 tiers of combat into it, so a lot of points. Then, of course, you're going to give him some big weapon, probably like the Dancer. And then you're going to run into a Ziliarch with Quicksilver. The Ziliarch just kills you. You issue the duel, he kills you. Let's say for some reason, after the Ziliarch does his 7 rerolling attacks and you survive with 1 wound, and you issue a duel a second time, the Ziliarch goes again before you. So Watchful Eye of the High Kings is a trap for new players. Dueling characters is just a trap in general. Don't do it. As far as clashing characters, don't bother building Nord characters into clashing characters in general. Nord characters best work as support characters because our regiments are supposed to be the offensive punch for our army. We don't have the defensive ability to take charges, take attacks, take duels, and then survive. There is one small exception to that, and that is the Conagar, who takes a tactical 1 Raven Messenger banner. So for 180 points, you can take the Conagar with a Bowchosen regiment, and because his regiment has 4 stands, his resolve of 4 becomes a 5, and then the Raven Messenger banner radiates roughly 25-26 inches all around him, 12 inches in any direction, of a resolve 5. That means your Fenrir, your Jotnars, your Ugars, your Raiders, everybody has a resolve of 5. And once you have a resolve of 5, you've effectively cut the offensive capability of enemy armies in half. Because most armies have cleave and armor piercing, so they'll cut through your defenses most of the time. But removing resolve is only reserved for terrifying, and not many armies have mass terrifying, which means if you're trying to make a general defensive core for a Nord list, you're going to want a Conagar with a banner and just have him sit in your back lines. Since he's a medium stand, he can sit on an objective zone while your bow chosen shoot at ranged while scoring you points while radiating out a resolve 5 for your army. Conagar scores the highest marks for support for Nords. He is our only source of base 4 resolve in the army for characters. You don't have to jump through hoops to get his resolve any higher. Just stick him in a simple mainstay regiment and you're good to go. His supremacy, living legend, is okay. You get terrifying on the charge. It would have been better if he just gave the whole army terrifying, period. But since you get terrifying on the charge, it doesn't work all the time, because when Nords charge, we have a higher odds of winning that battle than if we got charged, because we can't take any charge. So having terrifying is more of a win more ability when it's on the charge only. As far as special rules, Conagar gets 0 because he literally has no special rules. But besides that, when we take the Conagar, because he provides something unique for the army, something the Nord army needs, high resolve, and he gives you access to one of our best regiments, the Bow Chosen and the Ice Jotnar, the Conagar is one of our best characters. The Shaman is one of our 2 casters. Let's check the availability of his roster and its usefulness. Well, the Shaman comes with Raiders and a Mountain Jotnar. Forget about Sea Jotnars, don't bother with them unless your meta has high brutes and high monsters, but today we're not ranking regiments, we're just ranking characters. So the availability is it's low, but the usefulness is actually exactly what the Shaman needs. If the Shaman got no other additions to his warband and it stays exactly how it is, it's actually perfect. Why? Because the Shaman is a caster. He's going to want to stay in the rear of your army. And once again, with Raiders, you can upgrade them to be medium. Now, the upgrade is not automatic. You choose at the beginning of the game whether they are light or medium. So sometimes you can have the Shaman come out automatically on round 1 with a light regiment of Raiders, or you could have him come on automatically on round 2 with a medium regiment of Raiders. And since the Shaman wants to sit in the back and cast spells, the Raiders that are medium can sit on an objective zone, score you the whole game, while the Shaman is casting spells to buff your army and debuff the enemy army. The Shaman has 3 spells and they're all pretty decent. They all require specific uses and specific builds. So let's go over some clashing and dueling. The Shaman is a caster, so he'll never clash and never duel. He gets lowest marks for clashing and dueling. As for support, well, he's once again a great support caster. He gets high marks for that. His supremacy, Call of the Storm, basically allows you to pick 2 regiments in reinforcement and give them Vanguard when they come onto the battlefield, which is great, especially if paired with a blood-lusted regiment. So the Shaman does have some pretty funky builds with him. Of course, he scores high on special rules because that's all he is really special rules. And that puts the Shaman at an A. The Vova is another support character. Don't be fooled by how it looks in the picture and the regiment she normally is crammed into. She is not, I repeat, not a combat character at all. She is a spellcaster. She is our other priest, our other support character. Let's check the availability and usefulness of her roster. She comes with Valkyries, with restricted Huskarls and Raiders. So the availability is actually pretty poor, but the usefulness is actually very high, because the Vova is best when within a regiment of Valkyries. She has items that only function with Valkyries, and Valkyries, due to being blessed all the time, means that for the same amount of points as Huskarls, they actually are more defensive since their stats are virtually the same, except that Valkyries can re-roll defensive dice. And if you wanted to, for some reason, be offensive, Valkyries could also re-roll offensive dice. So Valkyries are just a better version of Huskarls in pretty much every way possible. They even come with support too, which we'll cover later. But the usefulness of the roster with the Vova is actually pretty good, because the regiment that she comes with works pretty well with her. Slightly higher than average scores for availability and usefulness. Clashing and dueling, she is neither. Support, well, she is all support. I can go through all these spells and tell you the combos, but that's for another video. But she scores really high for support. Her supremacy ability is like the Conagar, good on paper, but unfortunately has issues within the army. The Vova's Warband has Raiders as restricted, and Raiders have an evasion of 1. If Raiders were possibly mainstay for her, then she could actually take a bunch of Raiders with her Supremacy ability and give all the Raiders a +1 evasion to a maximum of 2, and that would seem like a pretty cool build. But as it is now, when she is on the board with her gift of the Einhar active, Valkyries just get a 1, and 1 is essentially worthless in this game. 2 is really good, 1 is worthless, which means you'd probably want to give her a Coils of the Serpent, but then that only affects the regiment she's in, not any other Valkyrie regiments you may have. So her Supremacy ability is probably the worst one we have in the army, because Nords don't play defense well, and her Supremacy is all about defense. No thank you. For her special rules, we have all the spells in the world over here, except 1 or 2. They're all pretty useful in most situations. That gives a Vova a solid B. In most competitive games, you can hit top tables and never even see a Vova on your side or the opponent's side, but if you were to see a Vova here or there leading arguably one of our strongest Anvil regiments, a Valkyrie regiment, at these top tables, don't be surprised that she'd be there. Lastly, the Blooded. Let's put the Blooded in C for now. Let's look at the Blooded's available roster and its usefulness. Oh, good lord, what the heck? I have to scroll for this thing? Okay, first of all, I could sit here for an hour and talk about this guy's roster. As I'm looking at it, my brain wants to talk about 1,000 different builds, 1,000 different combinations. I have to stop. The main one I want to mention is that he comes with Stalkers. He is the Stalker character. He can be included in a regiment of Stalkers. Stalkers have flank. The Stalkers can come on whenever you want them to, and then the Stalkers themselves can then move on to an objective zone early on with the Blooded's medium stand and score, and then the Blooded just kind of hangs back and just scores you. That's really what he does. So the Blooded has arguably the best available roster, so he scores high on those marks. As far as clashing and dueling, once again with dueling, don't bother. He doesn't have Quicksilver. As far as a clashing character, he is our best clashing character because he comes with every rule under the sun. Most important is Cleave 2. You can build him with Ragnar the God Spear, make him impact 5 with Brutal Impact 2. So when he charges into a regiment, he's going to hit with so many impact hits with Brutal Impact, and that's great. Don't forget to give him the Dragon to make him Clash 4. Beautiful stuff. And if you want, you can give him Combat 3. He's still just 160, which is not that bad for character costs. And with Clash 5 base, his impacts are going to go through the roof. They're all going to hit. And then when he attacks with his 6 attacks, he'll miss with 1 of them. So that's 10 hits, ignoring 2 of the opponent's defense, which is pretty darn good. He is our best clashing character. You can then build him with, let's say, Rayojar, the Redbringer, and you can stick him with Trolls. So Trolls coming off from reinforcement, all being bloodlusted, can charge into the enemy regiment. If you want to, you can give him Curse of the Vagar. So now he's going to be rolling with his Uger homies. So all the items that's available to him work with each of the regiments that are in his mainstay. If you want to make him shooting, which is a possibility, you can stick him with Stalkers and make him shooting. I mean, the Blooded does everything you want. He is not only the all-purpose character, he excels at them. So he is our best clashing character, our best volleying character, etc., etc., etc. As for supporting, just like the Jarl, his support options can be better done by pretty much any other character. Don't bother with him as a supporting character. His Supremacy Call of the Hunt removes randomness from a war game, and removing randomness is what you should be doing in every aspect of your war games. He allows you to bring 2 regiments on from reinforcement instead of 1, so you can have an entire Nord list on the board by turn 3 easy. Get a bunch of Stalkers with flanks, they come on the board. Some other Bow Chosen from the Conagar, 2 of them could come on the, well, they can come on the board. Then on round 2, once the Blooded is on the board, 2 mediums can come on automatically, your Anvil units, maybe some Ugers, and then on round 3, if you took 2 Ice Jotnars or 2 Mountain Jotnars, they could just come on the board automatically, and then bam, instant battlefield presence. Enjoy scoring early on, because that's not going to last too long with Nords. So the Blooded does everything that you need him to do. Special rules, he has all the important combat special rules that you would need. So where would we put the Blooded at? The Blooded is S tier. The Conagar is the S tier support, and the Blooded is the S tier clasher. Remember, neither one of them want to duel, but the Blooded is the one that wants to run in with a regiment and really mess things up. He's our version of a fighting character. This is the final tier list. The Conagar is our best support character because simply having Resolve 5 is better than pretty much any spell we can cast. Think of the Conagar as a spellcaster with a permanent Resolve 5 spell buff around him. That's what he does. The Blooded is our best clashing character. Remember, Nords don't duel. Don't bother. We don't have Quicksilver. And our Shaman is our best spell supporter with what he can bring to the table. Our Vova is in B because the Vova only has Valkyries and her supremacy is really... And at the very bottom, the one you don't want in any list for pretty much any reason is the Jarl. Unfortunately, anything he can take in his warband, you can serve better getting with the other 4 characters. All right, let me know what you guys think about this tier list, where these characters should go. Most importantly, why. Also, give me the standard by which you are ranking the characters. So I'll catch you guys next time for the next tier list. Join my Patreon and let me know which army I should do character tier lists for.